Okay, so I think I will fit this to the mount at this stage and then just continue working on the front of the shutter. So what componentry do I need here? Well, there's some screws for a start, so I'll tip my little bag of screws and bits and pieces into a container where I can see them. 1, 2, 3, I need 4 screws. One, 2, 3. Where's the 4th one? It is 4, isn't it? 4. So I'm short a screw there. Probably not far away. Right. This is the cam that cocks the shutter. I'll clean that. Here I'm just removing old grease, and I can see shiny bits which are probably metal shavings of some sort. That's good. And which one is that? That's my release. That's this one here. Okay. Post is there. This must be here. I'm just looking at the state of this. It looks a little bit funny shaped. I'm just checking that the pieces actually do fit together here. No, that does fit together. That's okay. And our release drops into the other hole up there. That's okay. So it should fit in that position. Let's drop in 3 screws, run them up, see what it looks like. Here's our flash tab sitting in its socket tidily, that's good. Okay, so 3 out of the 4 screws are present. Is that the last of them? No, it is not. It looks almost correct, but it's not. Check my bag of screws again. Is it hiding in there? No, it is not. Is it hiding anywhere else? Not apparently. I'll find a replacement for my missing screw. Me back. Alright, well that wasn't hard. I found a screw pretty much straight away in my box of spares, so that should do nicely. Just checking the action, that looks alright. So a bit of assembly work for the inside of the shutter now, I think. And I want to clean these components as I go. I was fairly confident I had that screw earlier, so possibly it's lying around on the table somewhere anyway. And we were short nothing. We'll find out. So where do I start? I think we'll start here. Not there. And these components all need to be given a little clean to make sure there's no serious problem with contaminants, corrosion, roughness, anything of that nature. This is the pallet wheel and its associated lever, and the pallet wheel is used to control the flash sink. Effectively it delays the release of the shutter until after the flash has contacts have made, when it's set to the bulb, the M setting, because flash bulbs take a measurable length of time to reach full brilliance, unlike electronic flashes, which are for practical purposes pretty much instantaneous. Flash bulbs were not. It seems good. And I will assemble the rest of the flash sink, flash contacts and stuff here. It is a bit more dirty, not sure why. I'll just clean these components. Now this is more important. This lever releases the shutter. It has to latch down in place as the shutter is cocked, and light pieces of metal, fairly large surface area, if there's a film of oil between them, this thing will stick, and as a result it won't work as intended. In this case there's no particular obvious problem of that nature here, it all looks pretty good. Just swing this into place, make sure it's tucked down underneath this tab of this spring, that its return spring is down in the case, and the flash contact here sits on top of that. Make sure that's free, it's not caught behind anything. I'll set that contact, set that lever across. That allows me to drop this into place. That sat down neatly, that was good. I want two screws and a spring for this piece. This screw has like a collar at the top that the spring sits around. It's important to make sure that the spring is free around that collar, not trapped underneath it. That's better, so I'm just making sure that that wiggles. That's good, means that's correctly positioned. And now I have to swing the spring over into position behind the lever. That's it, it's dropped into place. That's good. My main drive cam and its return spring, the retainer for the return spring and the screw that holds that in place can all go into place now. So I'll make sure that those components are clean. Cleaning the main drive cam is useful, not because it's necessary to remove the grease from it, because the grease is probably not obstructing anything at all, but because removing the grease gives me a chance to inspect it and make sure that there is no problem with it, that nothing is bent or corroded or damaged in some fashion which would prevent it from running smoothly. So I'll put a little bit of lubricant on the inside, and on those surfaces that will be catching on the blade actuating ring. While I'm here, I'm going to just lubricate two spots on the blade actuating ring that contacts at those 2 points, and one further point down on the detent spring down in here, just to make sure that that's lubricated. It means just allows that to move smoothly. Let's drop this into place. That's good. I'll put the retaining plate in place. This is the bracket that will hold the spring, or hold the end of the drive spring in position. I can check the other two positions on that lens tube, make sure they're down tight. Put a smear of molybdenum inside this spring. No, I don't think we'll have any problems with that spring. That is a good example. Frequently they're a little bit tired, more commonly than not. This one looks very good. So I just need to swing the end of that into position in its bracket. That's it. The shutter should cock. And if we hold things back out of the way, the shutter will release. That's good. So, smear of molybdenum on that little surface there. Two components. One is the shutter release arm, which drops into one of those two positions. The other is the cam that cocks the shutter. I'll put a tiny smear of molybdenum on the shaft of these two pieces. It won't need much. Drop that into position. This has to couple up here, so I can rotate that till it falls into position. That's good. That's correct. The other one drops in here and has to couple up with this piece here. So I'll just rotate that until it's coupled. Feels like it's there actually. Let's pop that spring over its post. That's it. So what that means is if this is turned, it will operate the shutter release on the inside. If this is turned, it will cock the shutter. So those pieces are all in their correct positions. And our next task is to clean and place the retard gear train and the delay action timer in place. So I'll have to clean those. I'm just checking the action of that now. That's the delay timer. You can probably hear it running down. It actually sounds pretty good. It sounds pretty smooth. No hesitancy there. Here's the retard gear train. I'll just set that. That didn't return. That's not running. It tells me that that's dirty. Yeah, it's a bit reluctant. Both of those need to be cleaned in solvent and then lubricated lightly, and then they can go back in the shutter. Well, I've got the retard gear train and the delay action timer back in place. They're all looking good, so I'm just going to clean up these remaining components and test the shutter and tyre and see what it goes like. It's looking reasonably promising. So this is the cocking ring. I'm just cleaning any contaminants from that and any old grease. The retaining ring and the speed settings cam. The dirty marks on that cam in particular would just be marks from graphite grease and the like, and probably wouldn't have done any harm at all. I'm just running some molybdenum around the surfaces that come in contact with levers and so forth. And I run some around the outside edge of this cocking ring and then around the inside edge where it runs on the lens tube. This has to hook into place over that stud. Drop into place. Check that it's all popped down in position, that the gear is correctly timed at this point. Our catch that holds the shutter in the cocked position. Checking that that's good, it returns correctly, looks good. has speed setting cam and the front retainer clip ring there. And the shutter should cock. The blades are open in the viewing position and it should fire. That looks good. I'll fit that to the camera body next. First I think I'll put the rear lens in place. So I'll clean that. I'll clean the rear surface first, the outer surface, because that's the dirtiest, and it enables me, once that's clean, to make a better judgment about the inner surface, which is harder to get to, of course, once the lens is in place. Bit of a rainbow sheen to that inner surface, which can only be a sheen of oil, I would say. That looks good. I just did that up tightly with my fingers. There's no need to do it up with anything else. And indeed there are no slots on it to engage at all anyway. That shutter should, in theory, go onto the lens and go onto the body at this stage. Make sure it's not down too tight. Got to engage 3 points here where the guide post goes, here where the shutter release goes, and here where the cocking action goes, and of course we've got our flash contact. So this is always a bit of a tricky business. I'm engaging the cocking part first, and then see if I can guide in the shutter release. There it is. This should cock now. You can see it does, and it fires. So we set that at a nice slow speed, we can see what's happening. And you can see there, or you may have heard there, that the shutter cocked and fired. The aperture dropped down to the smallest possible aperture because there's no setting ring there to hold it, to prevent it from doing so. And that shutter looks to be functioning well. So now I want to fix it in place. So we've got our 4 screws that hold our focus ring to the retainer behind it, and there's one position there, a blank hole, which we use to poke the loose ring out. Apart from that, there should be 4 screw holes which just about match up, so I'm just looking for them now. Just round a bit more. Is it there? Now I can see one. So my 4 threaded holes are all in line. That's good. So I can drop those screws down. And adjusting the focus is a bit of a shuffle. You've got to shuffle things backwards and forwards until things are correct, but at the moment I just want to fix the shutter to the body. So that it won't fall off. That's good, that focus mechanism's working correctly. I haven't set it, adjusted it yet, but that'll follow. With these 4 screws in place, I'll go ahead and finish assembling the outer shutter components. Let's try it again. Try the self-timer. Self-timer running down. And you saw the shutter open and close for the exposure. So far so good.